Sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, it could be due to the burden of the purpose that God has put on our lives. Welcome to Outside of Eden, the podcast. I am Brianna, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys being patient with me these last couple of weeks. I know I didn't post last week, but this episode is very timely as to what exactly was going on with me and what exactly I feel like the Lord was burdening my heart with. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can be updated when I post new episodes. First and foremost, please forgive me for not posting this past week. I was extremely overwhelmed. On top of needing to study, I prep for the podcast. I don't just post them. On top of me needing to prep for the podcast and post the podcast, I also had qualification training for work as well that you also have to study for. And then on top of that, I had agreed to meet with some people, and I just overstacked my schedule. I've been working a lot. So for me, I had too much on my shoulders, and with the time constraint as well, when you don't have all the time that you need in order to complete the things, it can be overwhelming. And so that's actually what we're going to get into in this episode. Please provide me grace. I do believe that the Lord has used this past situation of me not posting on the podcast and me just feeling overwhelmed to highlight the desperate need not to allow things to stack up. It has helped me to prioritize, and it has given me clarity on what exactly I need to do concerning my goals for the next quarter, as well as the podcast. So, of course, it has been a negative that I didn't get to post, but a positive because God used it to kind of put me in the furnace, in the fire of getting better and growing, which is always what I want to be doing. And so I appreciate your patience with me during this time. Okay. Now, speaking of overwhelm means to be flooded with thoughts and emotions and physical sensations about life's current problems, or it is this feeling of feeling like you have been given too much. Your responsibilities are burdening you. What has been given to you on your plate is too much for you, and being overwhelmed can be paralyzing. It can prevent you from being productive. You especially when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's like some things just won't get done, because there's too much on your plate. And, then on top of that, it can cause moodiness. It can cause irritability. It can cause you to have crying spells. It could cause you to withdraw from relationships and withdraw from conversation and being around people. It could, so I will say, honestly, I literally, if I had to choose an emotion, I prefer to be anxious over overwhelmed, because overwhelmed just feels like you just got a lot of weight on you that you're carrying. And it feels overbearing, and it feels like, dang, like almost like in some instances, I know some people probably feel like they're by themselves when it comes to those moments in time where you're feeling overwhelmed. And so this past week, I felt like I had all these things to do, but really none of the tasks could be delegated. None of the tasks could be given to other people. So, we're going to get into the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, because it really spoke to me, because it means a lot when you can see that you are not the only one going through something. And if Jesus experienced it and he can show us how to move through it, then that's the ultimate example. That's exactly what we need. Like, we don't even need Google or anything like that, Chat GPT. Jesus literally displayed what the emotions of overwhelm felt like and how he moved through it. So we're in Matthew 26 and 36, and it says, and I'm in the New International Version. It says, then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" He asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and he went away once more and he prayed a third time, saying the same thing. So this is right before Jesus is about to experience the betrayal of Judas and death on the cross. And so he's feeling the overwhelm and the emotions and all that the weight of bearing the cross bears. He feels it in this moment right before it even occurs. What was so powerful about Jesus was that he solicited the people close to him. He solicited the 3 disciples that he took with him that were close to him. And he took them to Gethsemane in a space where he could meet with God about what exactly was about to happen to him. He had already started to feel the weight and the burden of what God has purposed for his life. And so what was so powerful to me was that he went to the Father 3 times and asked, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." What I learned in this is that sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, it could be due to the burden of the purpose that God has put on our lives. So when even in these moments where, like me feeling the burden of the podcast, and Jesus is exemplary because it literally, he is about to bear the sins of men that he did not commit. He's about to bear death for the sins that he did not commit. So he is living actively. The overwhelm that he is feeling is due to the purpose on his life. So it shows us that there are moments in time in your life where you can feel overwhelmed by a burden that God has given you. And this is why he goes to the Father and he prayed 3 times asking God to take the cup from him. To me, this showed me that whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need to go to God and I need to pray to him. "God, if you're willing, take this cup from me. Take this burden of this feeling of this overwhelm from me. But ultimately, not my will, but your will be done." As in, if you take it from me, I knew that it was something that I willed and not what you willed for me. If you take it from me, it may have indicated that I was misaligned in what exactly you willed for my life. But if this burden stays and it does not dissipate, and I've come to you 3 times in prayer asking you to take it from me, then I know that it is a burden that you have given to me. You have graced me for because it is your will for my life. So I think that was very powerful, that it was something that Jesus ultimately could not escape death on the cross, but he still seeked God, just in case you can take this feeling from me, just in case you can take it from me, please take the cup. But ultimately, not my will, but your will be done. He understood that his even presence on earth was to come and do the will of his Father, not so that he can bear feelings that were pleasant for him to feel. On top of Jesus seeking God in prayer, if you notice that every single time he came back from prayer with God, and before he went into prayer with God, he asked the disciples to watch and pray with him, as in, be present with me in this moment. Pray with me and join in me in the sorrow and the overwhelm that I am feeling. I don't want to be alone in what I am feeling because it's overwhelming. It feels like pressure and burden and weight. He solicited help. In these moments when we're feeling overwhelmed, we cannot think that we will be able to do it by ourselves, including seeking the Father. We have to delegate tasks, especially when we are feeling overwhelmed. It is showing that we have been given too much. We are being given too much responsibility, that it's overwhelming. So we must solicit the help of the ones that are close to us, the ones that we love. or even if it's a work setting, soliciting the help of those around you, that your colleagues or whatever. But I think in these moments, if you notice that every single time that Jesus came back to see if they were watching and praying, they were asleep. This is why he said, pray that you will not be tempted in this hour, because in this hour, I need you to be present with me and watch and pray. So they are being tempted to sleep because this is an hour where Jesus desperately needed them to watch and pray. So it's just like in these moments, you may have these times where your help will sleep, not literally, but spiritually. As in, they won't understand why you need help. They won't understand your feelings of overwhelm. They may not be able to help you in the way that you believe that they should help you, or do it the way that you want them to do it. In these moments, you see that Jesus, in the very end, when it says when he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and he went away once more, and he prayed the third time, saying the same thing. It's almost like at this time, he has realized they have fallen into the temptation of sleep. Their eyes were heavy. They have fallen asleep. At this point, there is nothing that Jesus can do except leave them in where they are, in their sleep, in their rest, because he's already inquired of them several times to watch and pray with him. So him seeking God for a third time was basically showing you that in these instances, because we are dealing with imperfect human beings, when we solicit help from them, we know that they are not God, and God is never changing, and he's always the same, and he's always there, and he's, it's very different when you're dealing with human beings. He knew to go back to God and seek God, because God is the only one who truly is going to understand what exactly it is that I'm feeling. But this may not happen all the time. Your help may actually be of help. Thank God if it is, but we can't control human beings. And so Jesus is literally showing and displaying what it looks like to be overwhelmed, and how can we handle the feelings of overwhelm. First, we need to see, am I living outside of the will of God? Am I taking on things that God did not ask me to take upon me? I was increasing my workload, and God didn't ask me to do that. There's a lot of things that I've been doing that I have been convicted about. I have not been in the house of God. I will admit on this podcast right now. There's a lot of different disciplines that I had been kind of letting slide, and then I started to increase my workload, and so all of that came into play as to why I was starting to feel overwhelmed. My priorities were not aligned, and I was taking on weight that God didn't ask me to take. So it's important to pray the very prayer that Jesus was praying about. If you can, take this from me, take this burden from me. Take what I've decided to grasp and be like, okay, I'm going to take this on, but you didn't ask me to do it. So please take it from me. I know I picked it up, but please take it from me. But ultimately, your will and not my will, because sometimes we pick up things thinking that it's what God asked us to pick up. And in good faith, we did this. So we know that if he does not take that burden away, that it is his will, because the burden has stayed, and it is still on your heart. Now you must decide, what other things am I taking on that God didn't ask me to do? So, it's just one of those things. I know even motherhood can get overwhelming, and, it's just one of those things where it's just like, that you have purpose in that. That your purpose is to be a mother to the child. So that any moment that you are feeling overwhelmed, this is a burden that has been assigned to you. So it's just one of those things where you have to solicit your help, where you need to be praying fervent in prayer to God. Ultimately, not my will, but his will be done. And so, I appreciate your patience and your grace with me during this past week. I know what I need to do moving forward. so just be patient with me. As you can see, I got some new lights. So I'm doing things so that the podcast can always be growing and elevating, and so that I can always be growing and elevating. But ultimately, my relationship with God comes first. So, I'm just always working to keep that going. I hope this message was helpful and it spoke to you. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share with someone you love. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I will see you in the next episode of Outside of Eden.